Hi everyone, welcome. We're going to get started in about a minute. We're just waiting for everybody to join us. All right, welcome everyone. Thank you all for joining our third webinar of our Safe Routes to School Colorado webinar series. Today we're talking all about community engagement and how to work with people in your community on different Safe Routes to School programs. My name is Kori Johnson. I'm the Program Support Manager here at Safe Routes Partnership, and I am joined today by Michelle Lieberman, who is our Consulting and Program Support Director at Safe Routes Partnership. And we also have a wonderful Colorado presenter, Mayor Mintzer, who is the founder and director of Growing Up Boulder. So for those of you who don't know about us, Safe Routes Partnership is a national nonprofit organization whose mission is to advance safe walking and rolling to and from schools and everyday life, improving the health and well-being of people of all races, income levels, and abilities, and building healthy, thriving communities for everyone. Our vision, we know that our bodies were designed to move, yet many of our communities were created with intentional inequities that limit mobility. We believe change is necessary to achieve a vision of safe, active, equitable, and healthy communities, urban, suburban, and rural, for everyone. And as I mentioned before, my name is Kori, and I'll be joined by Michelle and Mara today to present all about community engagement in Safe Routes to School programs. And a few housekeeping items before we get started. To the left of you is the GoToWebinar viewer through which you can see the presentation. To the right is the GoToWebinar control panel where you can raise your hand, ask questions, and select the audio mode that you can use. So you can either do audio through your computer or through your phone. So feel free to use the telephone option or your computer audio option, whatever works best for you. Also, if you have any questions for us, there is a question box, so we will have time at the end for a Q&A. So even though you are muted, we do want your input. Please feel free to ask us questions, give us comments. We love to hear from you. Also, today's webinar is recorded and will be available online shortly after the webinar ends. We will provide a link in a follow-up email so you can refer back to it and share it with your colleagues who are not able to make the webinar today. We'll also send out links to any resources or materials that might be helpful for you. So don't feel like you have to rush and write down a bunch of notes. We will get everything out to you after the webinar, along with a brief survey that we would like for you to take. So today's agenda, we're talking all about community engagement. I'll be starting out by sharing a few community engagement guiding questions and a community engagement highlight reel. We'll follow up with Mara talking about her experience running Growing Up Boulder and get some Colorado-specific community engagement strategies. Michelle will be talking about considerations for engaging specific groups, and we'll end with a Q&A and a few different reminders. So that's what we have on deck for today. I'm going to kick us off with some community engagement guiding questions and a little bit of background on me. I've been at the partnership for about 2 years, a little over 2 years now. And my first years of the partnership were actually doing community engagement programs in Washington, D.C., where I am based. So, I was working directly with schools, school staff, families, different community members, all about Safe Routes to School and Vision Zero. We have a Vision Zero plan here in DC. So my work has been very community engagement based. And before joining the partnership, I was a teacher, and I also worked in like arts education at different art centers and galleries, also doing community engagement work. So my primary background is actually in community engagement, maybe more so than transportation. So I'm going to be sharing a bit about my community engagement framework today. So kind of thinking more about like big picture and my philosophy of community engagement, and then also be sharing some different highlights or activities that either I've done with communities here in DC or that other people around the country have done. So we'll start out big picture and then kind of like zoom in a bit on some specific community engagement activities that I have worked on. So for me, community engagement is all about relationship building, and it should be done early and often, and it won't always look the same. And relationship building, it's not only an important part of community engagement, but it's an essential part of developing greater empathy for other people. It's part of building a healthy community, and it's an essential part of creating a more equitable society. And I think that when we get to know each other, we can expand and challenge our own perspectives, we can form meaningful connections so we feel less lonely, and we can begin to advocate for each other. So all of my community engagement work kind of centers on this idea of relationship building and connecting with other people. And I'm going to share a few ways that I do this. So I tend to ask myself a lot of questions as I'm doing my work. So when I'm out and about talking with people or engaging in different activities, going out to schools, I'm always thinking about how can I build relationships with people, and how can I create opportunities to authentically connect with different people. So our big overarching question for today, for me, is how can we create opportunities to authentically connect with one another? And that's like the main way that I view my community engagement work. So the first thing that I do, and one of my constant reminders in community engagement, is to be curious. And I think that it's important to think about, where we're working and who we're working with. Some of us might not work with the communities, might not live in the communities where we work. So, going into a different neighborhood or a different community, it's always important to kind of have that spirit of curiosity, and also like do your homework around, about like the community that you're working in. So as I'm kind of thinking about where I work and who I'm working with, I ask myself a few questions. So I wonder a lot. I ask myself, where am I geographically, historically, culturally? I ask myself, who lives here? Who lives here and how did they get here? What are some stories I know about this community? What are some stories I don't know about this community? And what does it mean for me to be working in this community? So these are just a few questions I ask myself, whether I'm going into a new school or a new neighborhood. I want to make sure that I can kind of center my work on the people and places that, that are important to the community. So that curiosity is always with me as I'm out and about working on different programs. The next thing I try to do is I try to be open. So open to new ideas, open to having my perspective challenged, and just open to whatever the community wants to give me. And some of the questions I ask myself about being open are, where can I find community stories? What can I discover today? Where can I find opportunities to get outside my comfort zone? And what am I nervous about? And I asked myself a lot of these questions when I first started working with Safe Routes to School. I was totally new to Safe Routes, totally new to transportation, so I had a lot to learn. And I wanted to hear from the people, from the students and families I was working with. I wanted to hear their stories about traveling to school, about riding the bus, about different transportation concerns that they had, about learning how to ride a bike. I kind of became like a story collector during my community engagement work, and that helped build both relationships and also build trust with who I was working with, whether it was a student or a PTA parent or a school administrator. Having those open conversations about what actually mattered to people was really helpful for me in getting my programs up and running. The next thing is be a listener, and actually I like listening more than speaking, so this is a pretty easy one for me, but I think that being an active listener is really important to community engagement. I think that just showing that like you actually care about somebody's story or care about somebody's concern is really important and helpful. And it's also helpful for people who feel like their voices aren't necessarily listened to or prioritized a lot. A lot of the communities that I've worked in are under-resourced and are not used to, people aren't used to having their voices, heard or listened to at all. So, with somebody kind of coming in, I took a lot of time to listen to community concerns and community needs. So I would ask people, this one might seem really simple, but it's really important. What is your name and how do you pronounce your name? I've had so many people say, well, nobody's ever asked me how to pronounce my name before. So it's something, or nobody's taken the time to learn my name. So it's something that's might seem kind of simple and silly, but it has a huge impact on community engagement. Also tell me about, can you show me how you walk to school? Can you show me your bike? Can you show me that spot that you think is really dangerous? All of those questions are super important. And also just questions that kind of celebrate communities. What are you proud of? What do you love about your community and what would you change? I found that people really love to share about their communities and their schools. There's a lot of spirit and pride there. So showing that you care, again, helps with that relationship building and that empathy building piece. That's a major part of community engagement. And next is being authentic. I think that authenticity is at the heart of this. So people can kind of tell like when you're faking it or when you're putting on a show, and you don't have to do that. You just kind of have to like be yourself and give people something genuine to connect to. And in turn, they will give some of themselves back to you. So sometimes I ask myself, why am I here? What stories do I carry? Where are people and places in this community that connect to my interests? What stories does this community want to tell? And how can I help people share their stories? So working in DC, I would have people who would tell me stories about about walking to school and there not being crosswalks, or there were no sidewalks, or people who wanted bikes but didn't have bikes because their bike got stolen or there wasn't a bike share by them. So all of those stories kind of make up who people are. And so making spaces to kind of like share those stories and hear those stories is a super important part of making connections with different community members. And it can also be done in so many different ways, which I'll share about a bit later. And lastly, creativity is a big part of my community engagement framework. So as I mentioned before, I have an arts background. I worked for art galleries and art centers in a few different cities around the country. So I bring creativity into all of my community engagement practices. So all of my outreach activities, all of my programs I do with students, there's some sort of creative element to all of it. So I'm going to share a few community engagement highlights that kind of show off some of that creativity, both things that I've done and also things that have been done by other programs around the country. So here's our community engagement highlight reel. And I will preface this by saying, obviously, these were all done in a pre-COVID-19 world. So, it would be great to get back to the point where we can kind of engage in person like this. We'll see what happens. But there are also ways to adapt different activities and projects, to kind of move virtually or for smaller groups if necessary. So I found that it's really helpful to actually go to where people are. So, in your community, it could be a farmer's market, a community festival, or community event, back to school night, local businesses, libraries, recreation centers, find those schools, obviously, and, find those places in your community where people are. I've also worked with a lot of parents who don't feel comfortable coming into the school building for lots of different reasons. So I might have to meet them at, at a library event instead, or at a farmer's market instead, because they don't necessarily either feel comfortable in a school space or feel like school is accessible to them. So finding out like those important parts of your community, both in school and outside of school, are really important. So when I do my programs, whether it's, a bike rodeo or a back to school night festival, or even just like an information session at school, I always have a creation station. And my creation station is basically just like a table with any and all art and craft materials that I can find. I kind of use this both as a way to draw people in. It's bright, it's colorful, it's exciting. And it also gives people a chance to kind of, do something hands-on and do something fun. So a lot of the activities that I'm sharing have kind of been based on this creation station idea. And again, I've used it for all kinds of safe routes to school and traffic safety programs. So here's kind of like the creation station in practice. This was at an Open Streets event here in DC from last year. People are creating community quilt squares, which I'll show a bit later. So again, it's fun, it's bright, it's inviting. It can be done at different spaces. This one is from our we had a bike to school day event, and so the students made little like bicycle license plates. So again, I have the creation station out. I have different, papers and pipe cleaners and markers and colored pencils, and students are creating little bicycle license plates. So there were some students who were doing their, bicycle bike rodeo, and other students who were making license plates, and then they switched. So it's just like adding a little bit of creativity to an already fun and exciting event. I mentioned my butcher paper graffiti walls before, so I bring butcher paper with me everywhere I go, whether it's an information table, bike rodeo, like I just mentioned, walk to school day. I always have a piece of butcher paper with markers, and people can kind of like color, leave fun messages. You can ask a question. You might even ask something like, what's your favorite way to get to school? Or what would make you feel safer walking to school? And it's just a nice way to gather feedback from your community in like a fun, bright, colorful way. Next is this community quilt project that I did. This was at an Open Streets event, so everybody kind of got a different quilt square with a little safety prompt. So the square might say something like, what's your favorite way to get to school? Or what would make you feel safer when you're traveling to school? And then students can either like write something or draw something and then hang it up on the quilt. So again, like instead of doing like a traditional survey, this is another way to get useful information about your program, just in like a fun, creative way. This is a temporary crosswalk project that I worked on for a project called Safe Routes to Healthy Food for Older Adults. So sometimes we do safety demonstrations in our work, and we paired up with a local arts organization to create a colorful painted crosswalk that we then did a safety demonstration with it out in front of a library. So this was another thing that was, fun, bright, exciting, colorful. The materials for this were, I don't know, less than $100 to, kind of get the paint and the materials for it. So this was another fun way to kind of bring people together and do something that was safety related, but that wasn't like a formal, workshop. And as we were painting, we had conversations with each other and shared different stories. And then we kind of followed up with our traffic safety demonstration. So that was another kind of, fun and exciting way to bring people together and start building those connections and making those bonds with people. And along with that, we also did a creative survey. So this was about a grocery store, but we asked people, what do you need to make your trips to the grocery store safer? And people kind of like put a dot based on what they needed. This could easily be, adapted to say, what do you need to make your trip to school safer? And do like a little fun dot survey during a walk to school day event or a bike to school day event or during a back to school night. So again, it's another way to kind of make, surveying and data collection a bit more fun than just like a traditional, piece of paper. We also did a few like DIY projects, things where you can get your hands dirty and be really hands-on is great. Again, just more of the creation station, idea of people, getting materials and creating fun collages of their neighborhoods and artwork about their neighborhood. Again, all of these things help us connect with each other and learn about each other, and are totally adaptable for all kinds of scenarios. Walk audits we talked about in our first webinar, I think, are another great way to engage people, getting a group out and going and walk around your neighborhood and assessing different infrastructure in your neighborhood. So assessing, are the sidewalks safe? Are there bike lanes? Are there bike share docks? What's missing? What do we need? Going on a walk with community members is always a great idea. Photo video voice is also an interesting way for people to research their own community. So it's just using photos and videos to research an issue, communicate knowledge, or advocate for change. So again, that creativity piece is still there. And A local example from Montrose, Colorado, is Safe Routes to School practitioners. They're actually partnered with local businesses to help highlight their Safe Routes to School programs. So connecting with like a business leader in the community is a great way to advertise for your programs and to, kind of like boost up those local champions. So find out if they're, like community leaders who are in your area who could be Safe Routes to School champions. And last but not least, we know that physical distancing is a thing for now, so we can also do phone calls, webinars, online activities, contests, challenges, social media posts, education and encouragement videos, and of course signs, flyers, and postcards. Some people just like having that piece of paper or that sign or that postcard. So even if we are not able to gather with each other, there's still ways we can make those connections. And this is one great example from Maryland. Their county Safe Routes School coordinator just held a virtual safety week. This was last week, which was super successful. So each day had a different theme, almost like a school spirit week, and different activities. And students could do the activities and then enter a contest to win an Amazon gift card. So this is one adaptation of a safety week that moved from an in-person event to a virtual event. And I can also share out all the information about this event, but it's a great model if you're looking for some sort of virtual engagement activities for your community. So I know I went through that very quickly because there's just so much that was going on, but I will share out all of our slides and also share these community engagement cards that Safe Routes put together. So they have different activities and ideas for you as you're out working with your schools and your families. We give you a bunch of different activities and show you exactly how to put them together and adapt them for your audience. So there's a bit about my community engagement work, some of the great work across the country and my community engagement framework. And I'm now going to pass it over to Mara Mintzer, who's the co-founder and director of Growing Up Boulder.
There we go.
It's all you. Go for it.
Excellent. So, and just to confirm, you can see and hear everything, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Hi. So my name is Mara Mintzer, and as Kori said, I'm the director of Growing Up Boulder. So, Growing Up Boulder is Boulder, Colorado's child and youth-friendly city initiative. And our mission is to empower Boulder's young people with opportunities for inclusion, influence, and deliberation on local issues that affect their lives. So since 2009, we've worked with more than 5,500 young people, ages 0 to 18, 1,200 university students, and 60 partner organizations on over 100 projects. And it's really important to us to think about equity. So 50% of our young people are from historically marginalized groups. And just a bit about myself. So my career has been running programs for under-resourced children and families in New York and California, and now in Colorado. And so I've had a wide variety of experiences writing grants for and then running a variety of programs to really support children and families. So this work is just a great next step in all of that. Let me just do this here. Let's see. All right. So Growing Up Boulder is a collaboration. We are based out of the University of Colorado's Community Engagement Design and Research Center, or CEDaR Center. And then we're collaboration with our local school district and also with the city of Boulder. And the majority of our funding right now comes from the city of Boulder, but then we have in-kind resources from our university, and we also partner with a lot of local nonprofits and some businesses. So in day-to-day talk, what we do is we are a real-world demonstration of how including young people's voices in city planning makes a city better for all. And I'll just tell you too, all the photos here are from our engagements, and you'll see a variety of different methods we've used. But we also are part of a larger initiative. We're based on something called the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, which is a treaty that was ratified in 1989 by all countries in the UN except for the United States. And there are actually cities and communities all over the world that take this treaty and then implement it in their own communities in ways that work for them. So today, the initiative reaches approximately 30 million children in 40 countries worldwide. And they've recently developed that handprint image to talk about what those 5 parts are, right? So it's the right to be valued, respected, and treated fairly, the right to be heard, the right to social services, the right to be safe, and the right to family life, play, and leisure. And really, if you look at all 5 of those fingers, they really apply to Safe Routes to School work. So, Safe Routes to School shares so many of the same goals as a number of other global initiatives. So certainly I just mentioned child-friendly city initiatives, but also, of course, Vision Zero, as Kori was mentioning, and they also fit nicely within UN Habitat's Sustainable Development Goals. And they all have this shared goal of creating safer, healthier, more independent, and more joyful ways for our children to move around their communities. We've developed our own model over the past 11 years since we started. And what it really starts with is establishing children as the experts. They are experts on their own lives and their own lived experiences. And so we capture those ideas before we can influence them with any of our adult or outside ideas. But we also instruct about what the framework is that we'll be working within and what the project is about. And I'll say that our projects can vary from being a one-time engagement to being a semester-long engagement to being a whole year long. So this applies to all of those engagements, but it's done at different levels of detail. We next increase the kids' competence by having experts come into the classroom and engage with them, but also by having them research and look at precedents. So they become really knowledgeable about whatever field it is they're studying. And then we have the kids synthesize and share out their ideas. And they will share these typically with city decision makers or leaders in their community. And that really makes a difference because the kids know that we're taking this seriously. So the route that we travel in Boulder is not just for children, but with children. And so that's what I'm gonna talk a little bit more about today. And this is a group of second grade English language learner students exploring their community and giving feedback on a map that we're designing, and I'll tell you more about that. So I'm going to describe this by thanking all the different groups and kids who actually help us in our work. So I want to thank the toddlers who showed us that the path from point A to point B is not just about the destination, but it's also about the beauty of the journey itself. And here, these kids were studying what's called the 19th Street corridor in our town, where there is spotty sidewalks, not great crosswalks, and a lot of different factors that need improvement. And I want to thank the elementary school students who gave input to that same project. Here, they're using a version of Photovoice that Kori had mentioned. This one is with red and green frames. They're both the same frame. You just flip it over for whichever side you want. And here they were showing something that they didn't like. I'm not sure what it was. That's why you have the kids comment on it when you use this process. But there was something they were unhappy with in this picture. I want to thank the middle school students. Now, this was a group of math students who were struggling in math and really got engaged by studying transportation routes for middle school students and then analyzing the data they had created. And the teacher said it was one of the most meaningful math lessons they had ever done. And all of these kids, their input is going to lead to a new bike lanes and new sidewalks on this 19th Street corridor. And that's part of the corridor right there. It's right adjacent to it. So I also want to thank the 3rd graders, the 6th graders, and 9th graders, and all the parents who influenced the 2014 City of Boulder Transportation Master Plan. Now, what you're looking at here was a graphic that was designed originally in color by a graphic facilitator who took all the day's ideas from a bike walk summit. And she was able to integrate them into one drawing. And what you can see here is every one of the ideas that came from children and families. And then we did that overlay to point out how they contributed to the design. And in case you're wondering how we had the mix of ages, we actually had done previous work with the children and families in their class, the kids in their classrooms, and we talked to parents at outreach events. But because I had participated in that, I was able to be there for the adult all-day event and then help weave that into the ultimate drawing. And Boulder's transportation director used to take this graphic in her notebook and carry it with her all the time. And when they would have discussions, she would pull this out and say, this is what our young people have requested. We need to honor that. I want to thank the 10-year-olds who helped us study what a 15-minute neighborhood looks like. And from them, we learned that even though this park that they're playing on was only a 10-minute walk, they were rarely using this. The public housing site the kids lived in you had to cross a busy road, and also a lot of the families didn't feel safe letting their kids walk 10 minutes away without them because of fears of immigration enforcement for undocumented individuals. And so we learned a lot that 15 minutes doesn't necessarily work when you're 10 years old. It has to be more like right outside your door or adjacent. I want to thank the emerging bilingual 2nd grade students who studied what's called our HOP bus route. And this is a young lady showing us what she liked in the bus route. I think she liked actually that she could actually see the bus fares because they were at her level. And these kids made such an impact that they had requested a new bench because they got tired when they were waiting for the bus. And this was them watching the bench get installed the day of. You can see some of them are covering their ears because of the jackhammers for installing it, but it was pretty exciting. And not only that, the kids designed a mural that went up on the HOP buses. They had said taking public transit could be kind of boring, but that you could encourage more children to take public transit if there was something fun to do. So you had to hunt for the bunnies in the picture that was up on the buses. And because it's the HOP, the bunny is the mascot. So it was particularly cute. So I also want to thank the more than 700 children and families who helped create the nation's first printed bilingual child-friendly city map. And this is what it looks like. And we also created the nation's second child-friendly city digital map. So it's a similar but slightly different version of that printed map. And we did this all with 3 feedback cycles and 27 iterations of the map. And 52% of the kids and parents we worked with were from marginalized backgrounds. And that was really important to us because we wanted this free map to be a resource that everyone in our community could use. And so we paid special attention to literacy levels and to really reflecting back what we heard from parents and kids. And when we didn't get it right, we would adjust it and make it better. So these kids helped inspire maps that feature safe routes to school paths. And we also have safe routes to school videos, biking safety sheets, and fun child-friendly walking and biking paths. And so what you're seeing is a screenshot of what the digital map homepage looks like and some of the information that's contained up there. So we actually wanted to build in redundancy around safe routes to schools so that people might find it in more ways than one. So we have it included twice. One time is if you click on an actual school with safe routes to school, and another is on a homepage about safe routes to school. So hopefully families will find that information. So similar to what Kori had discussed, I kind of think about 5 key principles for participatory planning engagements. And as I had mentioned to Kori before the call, it's always exciting to see other people doing engagement and seeing them doing similar things because it makes me think, okay, we're on to something here. We've both found similar things that work to support authentic engagement with our children and families. So I'm gonna show you in my own words what these are, but you'll see a lot of overlap too. So these are the 5 principles, but I'm going to skip that slide because I want to get to the good stuff. First is we go where people are. So again, Kori had mentioned this too, and we don't expect the kids to come to us. We go to them. So whether that's in their classrooms or at a public festival, or even, you know, if parents were waiting to get their laundry done, if you have permission to be in front of the laundromat, it's a great time to get people's attention and engage them. Our second principle is we use a variety of methods to engage a variety of learners. One size does not fit all. And we also use lots of arts-based projects. We find that really a great way to get different kids engaged. And so whether that's 3D model building, or we also use poetry, we do writing. Actually, kids can integrate it into the classroom by having persuasive writing essays. In fact, we just had a letter writing campaign with 3rd graders to promote. They wanted to make sure that a library they love gets built, and they pretty much overwhelmed all of our city councils and boards and have been sending lots and lots of letters by choice, and it really surprised the adults. Number 3 is we base our engagements upon young people's assets. And some of those assets that we've identified are, first, their lived experiences, second, their skills and interests, and third, their culture. So this is an example of what we call a nicho box. Nichos are a type of folk art in Latin American culture where it's an honor. You create something that's honoring that someone in your family or a saint or something that's meaningful to you. Well, we had kids create their nichos about what they wanted in a future civic area park. And this little girl shows that she loved animals, she loved her family and spending time with her family, and certain foods that were important to her were shown there. And these all helped inform how that park was then later built. Principle 4 is that we communicate, we're transparent, and we're accountable about the process and the outcomes. And we do this in a number of ways. So one example that you see here is taken actually from a letter that the director of planning for the city of Boulder sent out to each one of the kids who had participated in developing our city's comprehensive plan. So on the left, we showed what the youth ideas were in their own language. So for example, they wanted to have places they could visit to be close together. And they need and like places that are easy to get to. Then you can see the wording that was translated into policy. Daily needs are within easy access from home, work, or school without driving a car. And it was extremely powerful for the kids to see how their ideas were taken seriously. We also document things both through the graphic that you had seen earlier, where you could see how kids' ideas were displayed in the final master plan. And we try to just have as many different ways of letting the kids know that their ideas have been incorporated in. Another great example is if you go on the Obama Foundation website, I don't know if it's still there, but at one point they had something which said, you said blank, and now here's how we listened. And so it really showed a before and after of how the Obama Foundation was listening to the requests of the community. Finally, our 5th principle is that we reflect, evaluate, and adapt. We don't always get it right on the first try, but we are always improving. And we really want to demonstrate that for both the kids as an example of learning from our mistakes and learning from our strengths, but also it just makes our programs that much better. And so we're constantly evaluating our work. And finally, if there are any more resources that can be helpful or that you want to investigate about our work, you can visit our website. You can also take a look at my TED Talk, which is called How Kids Can Help Design Cities, or our book called Placemaking with Children and Youth, Participatory Practices for Planning Sustainable Communities, has examples from all around the world of best practices in these areas. So thank you very much, and I'm gonna share it back over. I think it goes to Michelle next. And I will stop sharing my screen. Here we go.
Great, thank you, Mara. And thank you, Kori, for kicking us off too. I'm going to spend the next few minutes talking about considerations for engaging specific groups. And I don't want to say these are hard groups to engage, but just more of a reminder to ourselves as we're working with communities that people want to be engaged in different ways and participate in different ways. So here are some reminders and tips about specific groups. So first, I'm going to start with middle and high school students. As probably all of you know, that we can't really expect that materials and the program structure that we use with elementary school students will necessarily get middle and high school students excited about things. This is really an age where they're becoming more independent from their parents, and so it's really wonderful to learn directly from them. It's also an age where they value the thoughts and opinions of their peers, so we want to keep that in mind. So some thoughts or considerations, learn about their interests. This really goes a long way in relationship building, whether it be the latest video game or social media trends. It could be completely unrelated to your work initially, but learning about their interests and seeing how what your work can do to be aligned with them will go a long way in developing relationships. Embrace their desire to be creative and innovative. This is something that comes naturally at this age, so we definitely want to harness those things in the ways that Kori and Mara both described. Communicate how they do. So social media, seems to be the key. Also let them help develop the messages, because those are going to resonate better with their peers more than anything we can do as adults. And then probably most important with this age group is let them lead. So if they develop the program, they're going to be personally invested in it and personally interested, and they're also going to want to share that with other students and their friends, and really make a larger impact that way. We have a new Safe Routes for Youth toolkit on our website, and this includes strategies for engaging teens. The focus is really letting teens lead the program, engaging them being creative and innovative. It talks about specific strategies to engage teens and tying together the interests of teens and Safe Routes to School and Vision Zero efforts, and creating partnerships with different groups that are already working with teens. So we can send this out in the follow-up email so you can have the link and take a look. And the next group is students with disabilities. Some key reminders or considerations here is engaging school staff, parents and families, and the students themselves in program design to really understand what are the specific needs of students and how best to engage them. We want to use explicitly welcoming language. Unfortunately, students with disabilities are they're used to being left out, so we want to make sure that they know that they are welcome. So the information that's put out, whether it be flyers or messages, should say that all students are welcome, including those with and without disabilities. And then designing opportunities and activities for them to be involved and be inclusive. This includes providing opportunities to be active and participate in Safe Routes to School that aren't just focused on walking and biking to and from school specifically. This could include having activities to participate on campus, including the students who are bused to school, so designing activities for them to do, once they arrive at school or before they leave school to get on the bus, including activities that are adaptable to different abilities, and coming back to language again, including language that doesn't include just walking and bicycling, but things like rolling as well. Our next group is girls and LGBTQ students. Really key here is providing safe spaces for them to participate and to learn and to be engaged in a way that they feel safe. Bicycling in particular tends to be male dominated, so providing settings where girls and non-binary students can feel safe learning or practicing their skills or expressing their thoughts and concerns. Some great ways to engage with students is to partner with other organizations that are already doing this. So groups like Girls on the Run or Girl Scouts who already have established activities and relationships with girls in the communities. If there is a Genders and Sexualities Alliance or GSA Club or a similar student organization on campus, partnering with them to outreach to students. And then including, personal safety discussions. We should try to understand and acknowledge that different students have different experiences walking and biking in the community. So, for girls and non-binary students in particular, discussing things like street harassment and personal safety concerns, including those in our dialogue of what, safe routes to school really looks like. Some programs have gone above and beyond and really developed activities or curriculum focused very specifically on engaging girls. One example is the Girls in Gear program in Ohio that builds together activities related to bicycling and STEM. But these are just, really focused activities that help bring attention to and provide spaces for these students to participate. When we're thinking about working with diverse racial and ethnic groups and recent immigrants, first we want to think about communication, and language is really important. So providing the materials in the language spoken by the community, using images or in place of or along with words, but also finding out what their other preferences are for communicating and participating in the community. Some communities will feel more comfortable with face-to-face interaction. Some groups are comfortable with over the phone engagement. Some groups may be online on social media or may not. So we want to make sure that we're getting to them and providing the communication in the ways that they'll actually receive it. One way to engage different ethnic groups is to work with trusted community leaders and think about are there faith-based organizations, cultural groups, or the community liaisons through schools who have relationships in the community that can really help get the word out to them and feel like they can participate in a safe manner. And I'll just say for safe routes to school activities in communities of color or with families that are immigrants, be conscientious of how we present our in-person activities and who's going to be there. In particular, communities may have concerns about interaction with law enforcement. So consider, if law enforcement is going to be presenting at an in-person workshop or at an event, consider how their presence may affect participation, something we want to be aware of. And then finally, a group, thinking about different caregivers when we're being inclusive in our language and our activities, recognizing that family composition really varies. We want to make sure that all families feel welcome and can participate. So, thinking about grandparents, they may have mobility and transportation limitations that prevent them from participating in the traditional, walk to school day or bike to school day or attending a workshop on school campus. So if there's a way that we can address any transportation challenges and make sure that they're able to actually get to the venue would be great. Think about dads. Oftentimes, they are not used to being asked about anything related to school, so ask for their input. Older siblings. Again, sometimes a older sibling may be a caregiver or a strong role model for younger students. So engage them in the process of identifying safe routes and the connections between, the middle school and high school and feeder schools. Engage them in planning safe routes to school activities for their younger siblings. Babysitters and nannies. So, these may be caregivers who might not be getting the communication like emails that are only going towards, directly to parents, but they might be the ones traveling with students to and from schools. So make sure that, they're both getting information and also that we're, receiving feedback from them on what can be done to make the route safer, to make, the activities more impactful, et cetera. And then with foster parents, we can't always assume that they're getting information or aware of programs and ways to be involved from year to year. So working, specifically with your schools to make sure the information and opportunities are extended to every current family of the students, attending the school. And I'll finally, talk about the importance of tracking and evaluation. One of the best practices that I always recommend is actually, starting off with a community engagement plan and thinking through and identifying the specific groups in the community that need to be engaged in the process and identifying the specific methods to outreach to them and to ensure their participation. And setting goals. And we're not going to know if we're going to be successful in tracking or engaging different groups within the community unless we're actually tracking. So this includes tracking program participation, who's showing up at events, who's missing. And if you see a pattern of groups not participating, reach out and ask what you can do to encourage the participation and ensure their voices are being heard. So with that, I will turn it over to Kori to facilitate any Q&A that we've had come in.
Yeah. Thanks, Michelle. So that was a lot of information that we just gave you all. We have a lot of really great examples of community engagement work that's happening both in Colorado and outside of Colorado. So with that, if you have any questions for us, please feel free to jot down your questions in our question box, and we will take as many as we can get to. I did have one question that came in earlier about what types of walk audit tools we use. The Safe Routes Partnership, we have a few different walk audit toolkits that are available on our website, and I can also send them out in our follow-up email. I've seen walk audits, take place a lot of different ways. I've seen some that are student-led. I've seen some that are, students and school staff or parents and school staff. I've seen some that have, kind of involved community members or law enforcement. So it kind of, depends on your community and what you think works best. But we do have some templates that we can share with you to kind of give you like a basic structure for organizing a walk audit. Someone asked about attendees receiving slides. Yes, we will post the recording of the webinar and all of our slides on our website, and we'll also email them out to you. So you will get everything along with some additional resources of things we've talked about today. One question is, what is the general lag time between children's ideas and documenting their impact on policy? How is this communicated back to the original students that provided the initial input? So Mara, this might be one.
Yeah. It's a great question, and as you can imagine, the answer is not so straightforward. So it's always nice if there's a small win we can do up front. So sometimes that small win is enough just to even have the decision makers present in the room listening to the kids and the decision makers saying, here's what we're going to do with your ideas and how it's going to move forward. But then, of course, reality is the kids gave input, for example, on our civic area park, and it took about 6 years until it was built. So we put all of our documentation up on our website, we put it out through social media, but the reality is it's super hard to keep track of the kids. And the ones who successfully kept track of them were the 3rd grade teachers. So they had their class rosters from several years earlier and literally personally called or emailed each of their former students. I would think texting might work if you still have some people's information, but it's hard. We do the best we can, but it is a hard process because kids are changing so quickly, and so are their phone numbers and email addresses and even home addresses.
Yeah, I found the same thing here in DC too. And actually, I just wrapped up a program with middle school students. We were doing some walk audit work and some other safety engagement programs, some other traffic safety programs. And a lot of them actually communicated with their teacher through like Instagram, and actually the parents too. It was like all via Instagram. So I mean, obviously, like the teacher had permission to like connect the kids over Instagram, and she had like her own like teacher's account, so she got permission from parents. But yeah, like anytime they were meeting or running a program, she would either like DM students or post something on Instagram, and they were like there and ready to give input and participate. So there are lots of different ways of connecting now, and so kind of leveraging social media is another good idea. And also, like you mentioned too, just like old school, flyers, posters, and picking up the phone, like old school phone calls or phone trees. I feel like never go out of style and are particularly useful now since we can't really gather in person.
Oh, and one quick thing, the other thing that worked really well, but this was a quicker turnaround time, it was within the same year, was when we sent snail mail letters out from the planning director to all the kids, because we still had their mailing addresses, and the kids actually told us they don't receive snail mail often, so they were super excited to get something with their name on it in the mail.
Yeah, yep, letters and postcards. Postcards are another great way to reach people. Any other questions for us before we move on to reminders?
I see a question maybe I could answer that Melissa.
Sure.
She was talking about, you know, if children are the experts, are there policies in place in the city of Boulder that really institutionalize this concept? So from a larger perspective, there are not policies. And one of the things I would love to do is work on that. We tried to work on a Child and Youth Bill of Rights in 2014, and it just wasn't taking off. We spent 1.5 years trying to make it meaningful and get kids engaged, and it just didn't take off. So there are a variety of reasons for that. Where we have seen institutionalization of some of this is in specific master plans. So we've actually worked on 5 master plans where kids' voices were really featured in it. And when you look at that language now, you can see where the kids' ideas came across in each of those plans. So there is some institutionalization, but not at the top framework level, which is something that I really would love to keep working on. And I need politicians on board for that one.
Great. Any other questions before we move on to wrapping up and reminders? Okay, and if you all have any other questions that you think of after the webinar, you're always welcome to reach out to us, and we can get back to you with more information. So as always, please remember to sign up for our e-newsletter and join our Safe Routes to School listserv. We've been sharing lots of great ideas and resources about keeping your programs up and running, community engagement, some initial planning for back to school activities. May is National Bike Month, so keeping our bicycling efforts up and running during the month. So if you're not a part of that network, please join and contribute if you have any great ideas you'd like to share. And just some upcoming reminders. So if you have not signed up for the Colorado Safe Routes to School newsletter, you can do that with Wendy McMillan. There's been a lot of chat about the upcoming Safe Routes to School grant cycle. So as I know some of you have been in touch with Melissa about the upcoming grant cycle. So as more information becomes available on that, we'll make sure that we get that out to you. That's all clear, and you have everything you need to prepare for the new grant cycle. And our next webinar will be all about Safe Routes to School policy, which will be on June 23rd, Tuesday, June 23rd at 11 a.m. Mountain Time. So please make sure that you sign up for that webinar too. It'll be a great one, another great one where we'll talk about some local programs in Colorado sharing their experiences with Safe Routes to School policy, and then also more of a national perspective. So that will be coming up next month. And I'll be sending out a short survey right after this webinar. If you have a few minutes, please take a moment to fill it out for us. It helps us know what we are doing well, what we need to do better, and what you would like to hear about in upcoming webinars. So please make sure that you fill out our survey and give us that very valuable feedback. And as always, here's my contact information and Michelle's contact information. I can also share Mara's contact information again in our follow-up email. And again, please feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions or ideas or things you want to run by us. We're always here to help you and support you. There's also the CEDaR has also put together a community engagement case study, which is really exciting. So it'll give you a chance to learn about a local community engagement experience from Colorado, and I'll also be sending that out along with our webinar recording and our presentation slides and the survey. So please make sure to check out the case study. It is wonderful and will give you a lot of interesting ideas for how to do some great community engagement work in your neck of the woods. So that's it for today. Thank you all so much for joining us. Enjoy the rest of your day. Be safe, be well, and we will see you at our next webinar in June. Thank you.